This video is part of the SuperSmall Expert Spotlight, recorded live at AI House on December 18th. In this workshop, SuperSmall co-founder David Niu focuses on one of the most critical stages of building a business, turning a validated idea into real revenue through effective pricing, packaging, and sales. In this section, we focus on pricing in a simple but powerful framework known as the Rule of 85 that helps founders know when their pricing is too low or too high, based not on theory, but on real customer behavior.
Okay, so the next thing is just a little bit about SuperSmall and why Boaz and I are so passionate about it. Like, you're seeing like all these layoffs happening, and it's not just blue collar. You have blue collar physical stores, Walmart. You've got Salesforce laying off people. You have Accenture, who's in services. So it goes, Amazon. So it goes all across the spectrum. So all these industries are getting, and every time I go AI, I'll see something like that. But then you see something like this that says these small business owners are putting AI to good use. So these are people like us, and that's where we believe, even though despite the fact that AI is going to disrupt a lot of mainstream businesses, it also unlocks opportunities for us to think and start businesses on our own and take advantage of what AI provides. And over here, you can see that people are using it more and more, small businesses, all variety of tasks, from it could be financial analysis to customer success, customer support. And then a lot of them are reducing their staffing needs and not hiring people if they leave. And I don't know about you, but one of the benefits when you have less people, not only is it less cost, but it's also less mental cost, right? You don't have to worry about your one-on-ones, your skip levels, right? You can just be much more efficient. So that's why I really love the SuperSmall idea is you don't have to go and raise $1 billion. You can start super small, scale smart, and dream big, and still accomplish a lot of the goals. And then, as you can see, it's only going to get worse, right? This just came out in the journal yesterday. This is the percentage of people who think they're going to get laid off, regardless of their job, right, or their degree. And then, and the job postings is going down as well. So there was an article today that came out that is like, hey, if you do get laid off in the holidays, what are you going to do? Right, and there's a lot of despair. But I think the people who are bravely vibe coding and venturing out, that's I think where the future, where we can leverage that for our own benefit. So a little bit of background about Boaz and myself. We've done big tech to small tech, from Meta to a bunch of startups. Combined, we have over 50 years of experience on startup side. We've raised over 20 million, sold 3 companies to publicly traded companies. But I think what is actually unique is the fact that we're operators first. So we've been in your shoes, and I was just talking to Mark about, should you raise money? And I'm like, well, I've got a point of view about that, right? And so I think that we don't come from a very traditional background, but we come from a background of sitting in your shoes. And some of the things that we really lessons learned is, first is around time. Time is our most precious asset. So when FS1 and 2 was around demand validation, and then a demand generation, right? First, you have to validate you actually have an idea that people are willing to pay for, and then you can start scaling it, and then you have to start pricing it. Number 2, what took a team a lot of time, AI can do in a blink, right? Like, I used to do survey analysis, and now, like, I used to pay someone. Now I can just feed it into, I like Claude better, and then boom, the answer just comes out. So we have a lot of tailwinds there. And third thing, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? You gotta take care of your body, your health. You gotta get sleep, right? And you gotta hydrate and eat well. And these are things that I didn't do when I was starting my first company and dropping out of business school. And lastly, it's hard, right? You have to eat a lot of glass if you're gonna be doing a startup, right? And one of my favorite books or quotes is like, hey, if you gotta eat some shit, don't nibble, right? You just gulp and just get it over with, right? So, I love this quote, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together, right? And I think that's why we really believe in this community and sharing that. And I'm going to be unpacking, our collective 50 years of wisdom when it comes to sales, pricing, and packaging. So let's dive right into it. Revenue is just a fundamental math equation. You got price, you got quantity. That's it. So this is my new take on it, right? Is I believe what you want to optimize for early on is learning. So I'm not trying to squeeze and optimize the price. I'm okay with leaving money on the table because the name of the game is in different stages. In the intro stage, when you're trying to validate demand, I believe what you want to do is make sure that your slope of learning is as steep as possible. So get those customers through the door, even if you have to leave money on the table. So when I think about this life cycle and this trajectory, early on, you're just coming up with the idea and you're doing discovery. You want to keep your price low enough where you're getting a lot of at-bats, because that is the premium that we care about, because we need to optimize for this, because when the house is more in the blueprint stage, it's easy to make changes and pivot. But when you start pouring that concrete, it takes a lot more work. So don't beat yourself to death about optimizing for the perfect price and making sure like supply and demand meet so that you optimize revenue. So does anyone know who this person is? Any guesses? So this is Mike Galgan, and he's in Seattle. He's the founder of Aquantive, and that eventually I think got sold to Microsoft for $6.5 billion way back. So he bought my first company, and he's one of the top 3 most brilliant strategists I know. When I started Tiny Pulse, and Tiny Pulse was around micro surveys for employee engagement, I was obsessing about price. And I remember this cafe I met him by, and I said, Mike, I've got all these price points. Which one is the one? Anoint it for me. And he looks at me. He goes, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I obsess over. He goes, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Mike's point was, it really doesn't matter what that price point is, because what you're trying to solve in the early days is to optimize for learning, and that it's okay to leave some of that money on the table. So what he says, it's all around demand validation and getting your offering right so that people will pay for it. And when people pay for it, that gate opens and you earn the right to start optimizing your pricing, right? So that was like a kick in the teeth, but I still remember that from Mike Galgan all the way back in the day. So you don't have to worry too much about getting it just right, but we're going to teach you the fundamental principles so that you won't get gouged. So here's my third company, Tiny Pulse. So raised about $10 million. We got up to 10 million ARR, but the early days, we were just going and we launched, and I think it was like up to 15 users was $19 a month. Up to 50 was 49, and up to 100 was 99. And we didn't think anyone else would buy it more than that. So over 100 was the classic call us, which was like, we don't think anyone will go for it, but we're going to put it up there just in case. So the average price point was about $1.10 per user per month. And when we launched, it was very rare. I will say we got lucky. We caught lightning in a bottle. We were featured on GeekWire and TechCrunch, and then boom, we had probably over 100. We launched around 9/11 because I was afraid that timing back in the day. But we had, by the end of the year, we had about 100 clients paying for us, right? So we had a lot of at-bats. And then, so I was feeling pretty good about it. And so a bunch of VCs, if they sniff success, they're going to find you. Like, it's really hard if you go find them, but they'll find you if you're successful. So this guy, does anyone know who he is? No. So his name is Steve Hammerslag. And when I first met him, he's a big, tall, big personality guy. He shakes my hand and goes, hey, I'm Steve Hammerslag, but you can call me Hammer. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if you tell me I can call you Hammer, you must be either the biggest douche in the world or you can back it up, right? And good thing is he could back it up, right? He ran 2 publicly traded companies, one which was like eFax, and I think it was J2 Fax when they merged. And he was asking me about pricing. And he said to me, he goes, David, how many of your clients push back on this price point? And I thought for a minute, and I'm like, that's a good question, Steve. I said, almost none. He goes, well, then you're pricing it too low. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And then he goes, and he shared with me this thing that I will never forget, and you should never forget, the rule of 85. He says, if 85% of your clients are accepting your price and 15% are pushing back, that is the happy medium. If you have less than 15% pushing back, then you should keep raising it until that rule of 85 is met. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me give this a shot. So then I started talking to my team about, well, let's do a pricing test. And at that time, I was asking, we had probably about 6, 7 people thinking about, like, how should we price it? And people were like, well, it's 110, maybe we should do a 10% price raise, 20%, 25. And I said, boom, let's try this other pricing test. $3 per user per month from 110. And everyone thought I was crazy, right? They're like, dude, this is never gonna work, and this is gonna fail, and people are gonna be up in arms. And I'm like, well, in life, I think Jeff Bezos talks about one-way doors and two-way doors. Two-way doors are like, you can go in, you make a mistake, you can go do something else. But one-way door is like, hey, let's say you accidentally hit someone and killed them. That's a one-way door, sorry. So, you don't obsess too much about these two-way doors. So we did this, and overnight, we raised the price, and you know what happened? Nothing. So we basically more than doubled our revenue overnight for every new customer. We grandfather the old ones in, right? And this is what I learned. If you raise your price, everyone wins. How does that work? Like, you raise your price and everyone wins? Because your company has more money to invest in the product. It has more money to invest in customer success. It has more money to invest in support, uptime, all that stuff. So a great price raise is you keep raising it to that rule of 85, and then, because if you get bigger, it's going to be much more scientific, but for us in that startup world, that's a good way to think about it. If all your customers are pushing back on your price right now, that's way too high, right? So, but I would rather have more that, take it right away, like you're a client in Mexico, and you're like, oh, do we leave money on the table? I'd rather have that situation.